There's a subtle affliction that haunts the most sensitive among us, and it's often cloaked as something noble. I've seen it in the stories of those I've worked with, in the quiet moments of reflection, and in the undercurrents of the human heart. These are people who believe they're loving deeply when, in truth, they're slipping away. They call it empathy, but their soul whispers of something else: captivity. If you're an empath, you know this feeling, and you must hear this: the line between love and emotional possession is dangerously thin. Let's unravel this together. To start, let's name the shadow. Empaths feel the emotions of others as if they were their own. This isn't just poetic, it's visceral. Your body tightens, your breath falters, your heart aches, not for your own pain, but for someone else's. It's a gift, but it's also a peril. When the boundary between you and another becomes blurred, your sense of self starts to fray. What feels like connection might actually be an invasion of your psyche, overwhelmed by another's emotional tide. You lose track of where you end and they begin, and what you think is love may be something else entirely. This isn't about blame, it's about seeing clearly. I once heard of a man who dreamed he was standing in a mirror, but the reflection wasn't his. It wore his face, but the eyes belonged to someone else, staring back with a quiet hunger. He woke up shaken, asking what it meant. It means, I'd say, that you're carrying a piece of someone else's soul, and it's costing you your own vision. To feel deeply isn't a flaw, it's a power. But when it's unchecked, it becomes a silent pact, one where you trade your vitality for the illusion of closeness. This pact often forms in the unseen corners of the psyche, where your desire to be loved or needed meets another's unhealed wounds. You give your energy, believing it's compassion, but what you get back isn't love, it's dependency dressed up as affection. Ask yourself, does this person thrive in your presence, or do they lean on you like a crutch? Do you feel alive or depleted? Is your clarity sharpened or clouded? These aren't just questions about feelings, they're about the structure of your soul. The archetype of the caregiver, so strong in empaths, is beautiful but seductive. It promises connection but often demands your erasure. In dreams, this archetype might appear as a figure cloaked in light, offering you a cup to drink from, but the liquid burns as it goes down. The unconscious knows what the ego denies: not everyone who reaches for you wants to grow. Some seek a vessel to hold their pain, a mirror to reflect their chaos. And you, empath, without realizing it, step into that role, not because you're naive, but because your heart is pulled toward healing. This isn't malice, it's unconsciousness. But it's dangerous. You become the savior in a story that isn't yours, and the cost is your own sovereignty. The truth is, love doesn't require you to vanish. Real love is two whole souls meeting, not one dissolving into the other. The empath's challenge is knowing where their heart ends and another's begins. You don't merge out of deceit but from a deep, unspoken longing to be seen through your giving. Yet the psyche can't be fooled. When you're caught in emotional possession, signs emerge: exhaustion that lingers, guilt when you say no, a vague sense of being lost. These are your soul's cries, urging you to reclaim what's yours. The psyche speaks when the soul is under siege, and it doesn't whisper politely, it sends signals that shake you. For the empath, these signals often show up as a bone-deep weariness, a fog of anxiety that creeps in without reason, or a guilt that stings when you dare to prioritize yourself. These aren't random, they're your soul's alarm bells, warning you that the balance of your being is off. Emotional possession doesn't announce itself as a villain, it hides in the guise of love, devotion, or duty. But make no mistake, when you feel drained rather than uplifted, you're not in love, you're in a psychic bind. I recall a woman who shared a dream. She was bound to a tree, vines wrapping tighter with every step she tried to take. The tree was alive, pulsing with someone else's heartbeat. She woke up gasping, asking why she felt so trapped. I told her, your soul is tethered to another's pain, and it's pulling you under. This is what emotional possession looks like. It's not just feeling for someone, it's carrying their weight as if it's your own. The empath, in their longing to heal, often becomes the bearer of burdens that belong elsewhere. This dynamic isn't always intentional. The person pulling on your energy may not even know they're doing it. They're caught in their own unconscious patterns, seeking someone to hold their chaos so they don't have to. And you, with your gift of feeling, step in, not out of weakness, but because your soul is drawn to the archetype of the healer. Yet this archetype has a shadow. It whispers that your worth lies in how much you can endure, how much you can give without breaking. In dreams, this might appear as a figure drowning, reaching for you to save them, only to pull you under too. The unconscious doesn't care about your ego's need to be seen as kind or selfless, it cares about truth. When you're caught in emotional possession, it will show you. Maybe you dream of a house with no doors, where every room is filled with someone else's voice. Or maybe you feel a weight on your chest, like a presence sitting there, stealing your breath. These are not just dreams, they're maps, pointing you toward the places where you've given away your power. The empath must learn this: to feel deeply is not to merge completely. Love doesn't ask you to dissolve. Breaking free starts with a single, radical act: noticing. Notice when your body tenses, when your energy dips, when your joy feels borrowed. These are clues that you've crossed into another psychic territory. The next step is harder, it's saying no. Not with anger, but with clarity. It's refusing to carry what isn't yours. This feels unnatural to the empath, whose heart is wired to say yes, to fix, to soothe. But every time you say no to what drains you, you say yes to your own soul. This isn't about shutting down your empathy, it's about refining it. Imagine a river, it flows freely, but it has banks to guide it. Without those banks, it floods, destroying everything in its path. Your boundaries are those banks. They don't block your compassion, they channel it so it doesn't drown you. In the unconscious, this shift might show up as a dream of standing on solid ground, holding a staff, or locking a gate, not to keep others out, but to claim your space. This is the beginning of sovereignty, where you love without losing yourself. To break free from emotional possession, you must journey inward, into the places where light rarely touches. This isn't a gentle stroll, it's a descent into the shadow, the hidden parts of you that hold the keys to your liberation. For the empath, this shadow often hides feelings you've buried: anger, resentment, the quiet hunger for your own freedom. You've been taught these are wrong, that to be sensitive is to be endlessly giving. But these feelings aren't your enemies, they're your guardians, the immune system of your soul, signaling when your boundaries have been breached. I once heard of a dream where a woman stood in a dark forest, surrounded by voices begging for her help. She reached out, but her hands turned to ash. She woke sobbing, asking why she couldn't save them. I told her, your soul is telling you it's time to save yourself first. The empath's shadow often carries this truth: you've given so much that you've forgotten how to receive, how to stand in your own needs without guilt. This descent is about reclaiming those neglected parts of you. The shadow isn't just personal, it's archetypal. The empath is often pulled by the archetype of the martyr, the one who suffers to prove their love. In dreams, this might appear as a figure walking into flames, serene but consumed. The unconscious loves symbols like these, showing you what your ego avoids, that your self-sacrifice isn't always noble. It's sometimes a fear of being seen as selfish, unworthy, or alone. To face this, you must ask, whose voice taught me that my worth lies in giving? Was it a parent's silent expectation, a lover's need, a culture that praises your silence? This work isn't easy. Grief will rise as you confront the illusion that disappearing for others makes you whole. You'll mourn the years you spent carrying pain that wasn't yours, the relationships you poured into hoping they'd fill you back. But this grief is sacred, it's the fire that burns away the old story. In its ashes, you'll find something new, a spark of anger, perhaps, or a quiet resolve. These are signs your soul is stirring, refusing to be a vessel for someone else's chaos any longer. The unconscious will guide you if you listen. Dreams might shift. Maybe you see yourself wielding a sword, not to harm but to cut cords. Or you stand at a crossroads, one path familiar and heavy, the other unknown but lighter. These are invitations to choose yourself. The empath's shadow holds a paradox: to love others fully, you must first love yourself fiercely. This doesn't mean becoming cold or selfish, it means building an inner temple, a sacred space where only what nourishes you is allowed. As you integrate your shadow, you'll notice a change. The people who once drained you may pull harder, sensing your shift. Some will fall away, unable to meet you in your new clarity. Others will rise, drawn to your sovereignty rather than your sacrifice. This is the alchemy of the descent. You don't lose your empathy, you refine it into discernment. You stop absorbing pain and start reflecting truth. In dreams, this might look like a garden blooming where once there was only dust, a sign your soul is reclaiming its vitality. The journey out of emotional possession is a kind of rebirth, one that demands you shed the skin of who you thought you were. For the empath, this means letting go of the role you've played, the healer who absorbs, the giver who empties, the one who stays even when their soul whispers to leave. This shedding isn't betrayal, it's the sacred act of becoming whole. It's standing in your truth, not as a wall against others, but as a boundary that protects the temple of your being. I once heard of a dream where a man stood on a cliff, the wind howling around him. Below, hands reached up, pleading for rescue, but his feet were rooted to the stone. He woke feeling both guilt and relief. "Why didn't I help them?" he asked. I said, "Your soul is learning to stand firm, to save itself before it saves others." This is the pivot point for the empath: to love without merging, to feel without fusing. It's not about closing your heart but about giving it a container strong enough to hold its flame. This rebirth begins with small, brave acts. Say no when your instinct screams it, even if your voice shakes. Step back from relationships that feel like drowning, even if they're familiar. Notice when you're carrying someone else's pain, maybe your chest tightens, or your dreams fill with their faces, and gently set it down. These acts feel foreign at first, like speaking a new language. But each one is a stitch in the fabric of your sovereignty, weaving a self that doesn't vanish for the sake of love. The unconscious will mirror this shift. You might dream of locking a door, not in fear but in power, or of walking a path alone, lit by stars. These are signs your psyche is realigning, no longer bound by the archetype of the rescuer. The empath's rebirth isn't about becoming less sensitive, it's about becoming discerning. You learn to feel deeply but not destructively, to offer compassion without losing your ground. This is the difference between a sponge and a mirror: one soaks up chaos, the other reflects truth. As you claim your boundaries, the world will test you. People who relied on your self-sacrifice may push back, confused by your new strength. Some will accuse you of being cold or selfish, words that sting an empath's heart. But hold steady. Their resistance isn't about you, it's about their own unhealed hunger. In time, those who can't meet you in your wholeness will fade, and others will appear, drawn not to your pain but to your presence. This is the gift of sovereignty, relationships built on mutual respect, not mutual need. The rebirth culminates in a quiet power. You no longer chase love to feel worthy, you embody it. Your empathy, once a vulnerability, becomes a strength, sharp, clear, and grounded. In dreams, this might look like a flame that burns without consuming, or a river flowing within its banks, nourishing without flooding. You become a sanctuary, not for others' chaos, but for your own soul. And from this place, you love fiercely, not because you need to be needed, but because you've finally come home to yourself. As the empath steps into sovereignty, something profound begins to shift. Love transforms from a weight into a light. This isn't the love you once knew, the kind that demanded your erasure or bound you to another's pain. This is love alchemized, purified through the fire of self-awareness. It's not about merging souls or rescuing the broken, it's about two whole beings meeting, each carrying their own flame, creating warmth without destruction. For the empath, this is the sacred dance of true love. I recall a dream shared by a woman who stood in a circle of fire, untouched by the flames. Around her, figures reached out, but she didn't move to save them, she simply glowed. She woke feeling alive, not guilty. "What's happening to me?" she asked. I told her, "You're learning to love without burning yourself out." This is the empath's alchemy, turning the raw intensity of feeling into a refined presence that uplifts rather than consumes. You no longer absorb chaos, you reflect clarity. True love requires boundaries, not as barriers but as vessels. Without them, love spills over, flooding both you and the other. With them, it becomes a container for mutual growth. The empath, once prone to dissolving into another's needs, now learns to hold space, listening deeply, feeling fully, but staying rooted in their own truth. This shift might show up in dreams as a house with open windows but a locked door, or a bridge you cross without carrying anyone on your back. These symbols mark your liberation from possession. This love isn't loud or dramatic. It doesn't thrive on highs and lows, on the ache of longing or the rush of reunion. It's quieter, steadier, like a hearth fire that warms without raging. You'll notice it in relationships that feel spacious, where you're seen not for what you give but for who you are. The people drawn to you now don't need you to fix them, they resonate with your wholeness. This is communion, not enmeshment, and it's what the empath's heart has always sought beneath the layers of sacrifice. But this alchemy doesn't happen without work. You must face the wounds that drove you to confuse love with possession, perhaps a childhood where love came with conditions, or a past where being needed felt like being chosen. These wounds live in the unconscious, surfacing in dreams of locked rooms or endless chases. To heal them, you don't fight or flee, you witness. Name the pain you've carried, not with shame but with compassion. Speak it aloud, "I gave myself away to feel safe." The psyche hears truth and begins to rearrange itself. As you heal, your presence changes. You become a mirror, not a magnet. Those who once fed on your empathy may fall away, unable to manipulate your clarity. Others will be drawn to you, not to consume but to connect. In dreams, this might look like a garden you tend alone, blooming with colors you've never seen, or a figure who walks beside you, not leaning but sharing the path. This is the promise of true love. It doesn't ask you to vanish, it invites you to shine. And in shining, you show others they can do the same. The final step for the empath is not a destination but a becoming, a reclamation of your light, your voice, your very being. This is where you step fully into your power, not as a savior or a martyr, but as a sovereign soul who loves without losing themselves. It's a quiet revolution, one that ripples outward, not through sacrifice but through presence. You become a beacon, not by rescuing others, but by embodying the truth that they, too, can return to themselves. I once heard of a dream where a woman stood on a shore, waves crashing at her feet. She held a lantern, its light steady despite the storm. Figures approached, drawn to the glow, but she didn't wade into the water to pull them out. She simply stood, illuminating the way. She woke with a sense of peace she hadn't known before. "I felt whole," she said. This is the empath's liberation, to shine without dissolving, to love without surrendering your soul's boundaries. This liberation comes when you stop mistaking intensity for intimacy, chaos for connection. You see now that the relationships that drained you were often echoes of old wounds, times when you learned that love meant shrinking, pleasing, or silencing your truth. These patterns, buried in the unconscious, might appear in dreams as a child crying in a locked room or a figure running from a shadow. To free yourself, you must name these truths without judgment. "I stayed too long because I feared being alone." In speaking them, you break their spell. The world may not understand this new you. Those accustomed to your endless giving might push back, sensing the shift in your energy. They may call you distant, selfish, or changed. Let them. Their words are not about you but about their own discomfort with your clarity. You are not here to carry their chaos, you are here to reflect their potential. In time, some will meet you in this new space, drawn to your authenticity rather than your availability. Others will fade, and that's okay. True connection thrives on mutual wholeness, not mutual need. Your dreams will reflect this transformation. Where once you saw drowning or entrapment, you might now see open fields, clear skies, or a door you choose to walk through. These are the psyche's way of saying you're coming home to yourself. Your empathy, once a vulnerability, becomes a gift of discernment. You feel deeply, but you no longer drown in what isn't yours. You offer compassion, but you don't let it erode your foundation. This is the mystic path of the empath, to feel everything, yet remain whole. And so, dear empath, know this: what you thought was love may have been emotional possession, but that doesn't make you foolish, it makes you human. Every step you've taken, every pain you've carried, has been a teacher. The wounds that once bled you dry are now doorways to wisdom. You are not here to be consumed, you are here to become. Your sensitivity is not a curse but a calling, one that asks for clarity, for boundaries, for fierce self-love. When you stand in that truth, you don't just heal yourself, you light the way for others. This is your rebirth, your sacred return, and the world feels your light, not as a flare of sacrifice, but as the enduring warmth of a soul finally home.